Okay, hello. I'm set up to do a little bit of a demonstration alongside with whatever kit you have. So I'll also be using the Mungyo set. This is my tin, and how I've arranged the little pans. I don't know if yours will come in packets, and you'll have to get rid of the labeling and stuff on them and then fit them in. They do slide in. I won't take them out because they just lock in place with this metal hinge. They can move around freely though, so be careful. And mine have been known to slip out. You have 2 big wells here, and you've got 4 smaller wells this side of space to color mix on, and then it would be best to color mix in those spaces, like pulling paint from the pan onto those spaces rather than on the pan itself, just to keep things clean. I've also got tissue paper, and you'll see they can get really muddy and gross, but I'll just use a fresh one for now, and a water brush. This is primarily all I'm going to be working with. All you need is something to clean your brush on and clean the paper with if you're dabbing or soaking up water if things go wrong. The water brush itself filled with water. You can just use any clean tap water, bottled water, whatever is available to you as long as it's clean. They unscrew the opposite way than regular screws, so instead of left is loose and right is tight, it's the complete inverse. So I don't know if this will be the case for the one you have, but this is what I find with all of the ones I own. Sometimes they have little labels that say push on them, so you can push them to squeeze out a little bit of water, get the water flowing before you start, because they'll be very dry. Some of the caps fit on the back or the bottom, and it looks like this one does as well. So that's all you really need. Make sure that it is tight, so no water leaks. If you press too hard, you will make water leak. Sometimes this is useful if you want to wet a pan or pre-wet the surface of the paper. You can see there I'm just dropping it on. So there we go. Okay, so I'm going to just show you what it looks like swatching into the pan and whatnot, just to see how you can get them activated. So I like to just lick the surface of the pan with the brush. Water will come off just the right amount you need, doing like as many licks as you need strength of the color, and then I will take that to an empty space in the metal pan, and I will squeeze out a little bit of water. You don't have to do this, I just find this is what I do to get it flowing, and then I just lick the surface of the metal, and this will make a little patch of your color, and you can just repeat this with purity, making sure you're not dipping into anything else that might be there. Preferably you're going to clean this. I'm not really fussed because I'm using some of these colors still, so I don't really want to get rid of it right now. Then if you want to make the mixture lighter, I find putting more water into these wells is going to make it lighter. You can separate it out by moving it with the brush and then just apply more water, and you will make the mixture more watery. So I'm just going to go to the page now, and there we go, the square swatch of the pure yellow pigment, lemon yellow pigment we have, and then you let it dry. When it dries, it may change color. I cannot remember if this is with gouache or watercolor from the top of my head, but I think lighter colors dry darker and darker colors dry lighter. That may be a gouache thing, and then in which case watercolor will be all colors dry lighter. So one of the two. So you'll want to do things like layering or go a little bit darker than you expect in wet paint to when it then dries. So that was a wet brush onto a dry surface, okay? That's primarily how you're going to be painting a lot of the time. You can drip a little bit of water onto the surface. If I can just do it, this brush is quite firm. There we go. And then you can move it around, so you can really make beads and do it however which way you want. Just get used to how it feels, and there you go. That'll be a lighter shade because there's more water involved. To clean the brush, I take let's get this out of the way. I take the blotting paper or tissue and I just wipe the surface of it, because the water is going to keep running through the brush, and that'll just gradually clean it. And then when it runs clear or close to clear, you know the brush is ready for your next swatch and you won't contaminate anything. This is really important, I feel, because you can really make muddy colors. If you want muddy colors and things to blend and stuff, you may not want to do this. If you want really pure, clean colors and then mix them when needed, this is important. So there we go. It's ready for the next color. You'll need, these are like really reusable. I think you can get like sponges and stuff and do this with a sponge. That can be a way of making it reusable as long as it's not reactivating. Because the problem we have with watercolor sometimes is once this area is dry, I can apply just water to it and move it around, and you'll see I can drag and pull the pigment around. This can both soften edges and pull the paint off or lighten areas. So if I wet this enough and then dab it with some tissue, I can lift color. So if you make a really bad mistake, you can try this technique to try and lift it. In some cases when it's like fully dried, you're not going to get it off. It's best to do this when it's still wet. So there is like a window of time in which you want to work. So in some cases you have to work quickly. Yeah, so that's the yellow color we have. What else? Shall we try a different color? We've done okay, I don't know. Let's do, so this is wet on dry. If I pre-wet the surface with a clean brush, so make sure the brush is clean before you do this, and I'm just going to wet the surface of it. I'm just going to brush as though I had color or something on it. This is going to put water onto the page and make it slightly damp. The more you do, or if you do that bead, right, the more wet the surface is going to be. So try both ways, whether it's wetting the page like this or dropping a bead of water onto the surface. This pre-wets the page. We're now going to take, let's say our other yellow, our warmer yellow, which is an ochre color. I'm going to lick the pan like so you can see. Just doing this. The more I do it, the stronger the color is going to be. And I'm going to go in strong. And with this area wet, while it's still wet, if I just touch the area, okay, great, it's not working. I clearly didn't do enough water. Let's just see. So wetting the surface, and then when I dip into it, I'm injecting color into the area. And if you get the page wet nice enough, it'll just sort of bleed into the wet area exclusively. Which is sometimes what you want if you want really soft colors, soft edges, and to do mixing on the paper itself. So while that's wet with one color, and I'll just show you while it is wet, so it's thoroughly wet now, I'm going to clean my brush. I'm going to go into, let's take a different color, like a green, something like pretty opposite. So pure green. It's next to it in the color wheel, but you get the point. And then if I dip into it, you see little specks of color. This is not the best paper for it, but the more I move it around, it's going to blend with the yellow and bleed over time as it dries. You generally don't want to move this around as much. It will just naturally happen if you have the right paper, and it will give a very bled, soft color mixing on the fly. So that is also a very useful technique to learn. So we have wet on dry, wet brush on dry paper. We have a wet page and wet brush. So wet brush on wet page or wet area, and that's going to give us a soft bleeding effect. Those two techniques are probably going to be the most used to use. There are some other techniques that we can cover later, but those are like the best two you're going to use. Mixing. You can mix on the page, but I don't highly recommend it. If you're going to do your mixing, you're going to want to mix in your pans. Take from the pan, put to the wells, add the right ratio of water you want, the intensity of colors, how many colors you want. I'm going to clean a well out and then come back to demonstrate it in the well. Okay, so here we have just space in frame of an empty well that I've cleaned. I just applied water using the brush and then took my pad of blotting paper and then wiped it away. So we got empty space, and you can see some of the colors I have this side. So if I want to mix a color, I will take from one, and generally I'll go pretty strong. You want to pick something that is light first. Get all the light, get all the lightest color you need first. So if you're mixing an orange, you'll want to start with yellow, because it is the lighter shade. The value of it is brighter than the orange. And then you can drop in little bits of the darker color until you get to your desired one. That way you just have a little bit more control over what's happening. So I've licked the surface of that darker green, and I'll go darker than this, that's why. You don't always have to do that, it's up to you entirely, obviously, but I find I get more control if I do remember to do that technique. So there we go, I'm dropping water in with this green. Then I'm going to clean my brush. You don't have to. If it's a really strong color and you dip into something like white afterwards because you don't follow the lighter color thing I was talking about earlier, then you're gonna make the white as disgusting as I've got mine at the moment. And that's me trying to keep it clean. So that's why you want to do your lighter colors first and to keep things clean. So we've got that green there, and that well will just remain wet. They can dry, and as you can see next to it, these ones have dried if you leave it long enough, and then you can close the pan after it's dried because you don't want to be flicking paint everywhere. And then I'm going to take another color. Let's take a red, okay? Just something like quite a bit opposite side of the color wheel, something a little bit complementary. So we'll see what happens. It'll probably like gray things off and give us like a neutral kind of color. So I just lick the surface just a little bit, and then I'm going to drop it. You can drop it nearby and then merge them. You can drop it straight into it and then color correct it from there. But let's just do this, okay? So I've just dropped a bead of water and I'm just putting the color in there. And then I'm going to introduce the green to the red, say. You see it's changing like before your eyes. You could entirely just do that and mix them all together. Along with gravity, it's probably just going to end up like that anyway, so be careful. This is why these are shaped this way. Now we've got a new color. The reason you want to mix this way is because you can keep the color pretty consistent. You know the ratio you mixed for it. You can even write it down, you know, like 2 parts red, 1 part green. And you can get more out of it this way. You can pre-mix the color and as much as you need, because one thing you'll find happens a lot is you may not mix enough of the color you need, especially if you're doing it on the fly, and then that can lead to inconsistencies. So after doing that, I just dip into this, and now I can add more water and more mixtures to this, as many as I want, and then I can come to the surface and lick the surface. So we've made like this and it's not mixed purely. You can see some of the red is on my brush still, and that's why the more I dip out, the more red it's getting. It's got a cool color effect, like it's a blending of two on the go. Let's just dip into that and try again. It is made a neutral color. It's still got green and red. They're very opposite each other, so it's going to make something very gray. It's a nice color. Like, these are good to have, like, for neutral things, to neutralize things. You don't want everything to be super intense bright like that yellow, but it is all personal preference, of course. So there we go. That is how you mix them. If this is really wet, you may need to dry it off before you close the tin, because if I go and close this now, I'm going to spill colored watercolor all over my other colors and such. So just be careful. If I apply more water to this, I will water it down and I will get a lighter value. So the way we control the value in color, and I'll talk about this more later as well, is by primarily adding more of a lighter color, or water, or white. Water is going to be your go-to. So now if I do this, we're going to get a lighter color. It's kind of gone just red, hasn't it? I think it's because it came just off my brush. I didn't actually... So, as you can see here, I'm mixing on the page. I did two separate areas that were wet, and while they're still pretty wet, I'm just bridging the gap between them. And I could drop into this kind of pink color and go back this side and work the other way. And we're going to get a similar effect like this had, but more control, more manually done. So you can mix on the page as well. You want to work, and this is a big important note, you want to work from light to dark. You want to work from the lightest areas and patch them all in, and then you want to work your way slowly down through the value to your darkest colors to black. Because it is easy to go too dark and not be able to recover from it, than the opposite. You can go too light and then always go darker. The other thing is, if you put down dark colors and then I wet the page like this, I'm just going to be dragging and muddying the dark colors. They're just going to, if I put down black and then go over it, I'm going to reactivate that surface like we talked about here, and smear it, and it's going to make muddy, unwanted colors. Muddy colors can be really pretty. There's a debate on whether there is such thing as a muddy color. There isn't really, in my opinion. I can understand and respect both schools of thought with how some watercolor artists and stuff want to keep things as pure color as possible. It makes it bright and pleasing and controlled. While others love to reuse their wells and stuff that are full of color. There is a place for both of them in work, I think. So it's just something to think about. So I'm going to stop and then move on to arranging a color wheel, I think. I think we're just going to pre-wet the surface and then just drop it in very roughly and quickly, and talk about that. You can see, now I'm covering up my watercolor, but that's fine, this book is very shitty. I've cut the color wheel in half, essentially, as best I can here. I've put all my cool tones this side. Now black, I don't know, that could be considered a bit warm, or it's very neutral. This black is neutral, so is white, when it's not muddied like this. But the greens and the blues and the purples are this side, and then we've got our warm tones this side. This is just for ease of access, and it also goes around in the color wheel. They follow each other, you know. If I go around this way, I can go into my green yellows, and then green, darker greens, green blues, violet blues or purple blues, and then straight into just purple. and then back around into more like magenta, pink and red colors, full on red, orange, yellow. And you'll see in this set, and I'll swatch them out in the next gap of time, we have some colors that lean towards green. Say this primary yellow leans towards green, versus a yellow that, when we look at it, it is desaturated, but it is also closer to orange. So then this would be more warmer. And so if we want to mix colors that are orange, we're going to want to use this yellow over our green yellow to make things that are more vibrant in intensity. And we'll see that next. Okay, you can see here, and this is unstabilized, so it's going to be wobbly, but you can see this is the traditional color wheel, one painters have used for a long time. That is made up of 3 primary colors, and they are the larger squares. Okay, we've got yellow, red, and blue. For the longest time, people have been using this. This is not exactly how real light works, and so our monitors on our screen and stuff use a different color wheel that has primaries of red, green, and blue. But because of the way pigments mix, this is a pretty good way to pretty good reference material for pigment mixing. Here's a whole bunch of softened hues around the wheel. Like, we can really see the blending and gradation between each of them and how they relate. Sometimes you see this flipped. You'll see so many different kinds of color wheels. So from yellow to orange to red to violet to purple to deep ultramarine blues to cyan to turquoise to emerald greens, and like olive greens, and then back up to yellow. So, and we can do a lot with the kit we have. Okay, there are also other kinds of color wheels, and how we mix them and how we get to them and what primaries we start with. So this is a hand-painted Yombi wheel, and we've got information on the side I can read out later. But as we get closer to the center, things hit neutral gray, and then outside is our saturation. So when we go up one of these cones, it's saturation, and then when we go in towards the middle, things are getting desaturated and closer to each other. The value side of it, and we're talking about Mungyo color theory as well, which is, he's referenced it here, but it's more like a 3D shape, where if this was a cake or a tower, the 3D depth going up and down as we see it would equal value. So that center color would become white or black, and everything would mix towards white or black. Because in theory, these colors, we can't take that intensity of pure yellow at the top, right, and make that closer to black without graying it out, or brighter for that point, without it becoming washed out in a tint. Let me turn the page here. So that could have sort of leads into, if we just look at like one segment or slice of all the possibilities we have with one of these colors, we get charts like this, and they're all individualized for each hue, where from top to bottom we have value, okay, one of the 3 components to light. 0, the bottom, is pure black, okay. 1, white at the top, is white as we can get it in this image. From left to right, we're increasing in saturation. Okay, now I'll discuss this more. It isn't actually saturation. From left horizontally, specifically left to right, is chroma. And then from the black point to our most saturated version of the color we have, like one of these ends, right, these columns, this line here is saturation, is our saturation path. And it's a big misnomer that people have, where we think this just is all saturation, but there's a difference between chroma and the saturation path of a color. We cannot make, also you see, cannot make this shade of yellow any more saturated and brighter. You know, if we want something brighter, then we drop in saturation that much. If we want something darker, then you see it follows this column. Like if we go half black from here to there, it drops in saturation. The other thing to notice is each of these primaries and each of the other secondaries and all the hues we have, each color sort of sits at a different natural point in value and saturation. So our blues naturally have a darker value when they're most saturated, and the reds are just above that. Their most saturated point is in the middle of the value chart. Yellow is probably one of the most saturated colors you're gonna get. That is the brightest. The brightest, especially with digital screens and whatnot, is gonna be green. That is the most bright and saturated point we have is green. But with color mixing and stuff, this is up to debate. With traditional pigments, it is probably gonna be yellow. Yeah. So that's chroma and value as we see it. Let's just bring this back. So we've briefly looked at the color wheel and how that there are many different ones that are mixed, but we've got our traditional one that we can use with pigments. We've looked at chroma versus saturation and how that relates a little bit to value. But let's get back to actually demonstrating with the colors we have. So I'm just going to swatch each one so we can have a look at the color, and I'm going to go around the wheel. I'm thinking whether to do this in a big pre-wet surface so that we can try and get it blending, but I have a feeling this isn't going to work with the paper I'm currently using. Let's just try in the corner here. So if I just drop a good amount of water and just smear this around into a rough circle, say. As long as it stays wet, it should work, but this is not good paper. Okay, so we got our purest yellow, and I'm just going to drop in let's pull this towards you. Start at the top, and I'm just going to drop in yellow. So this is where it's going to be most saturated. And if I pull it down, and hopefully just clean my brush at the same time, it'll pale out to the middle, right? This is like our wedge or slice. I think I'm going to try and keep this wet, so let's just drop some more water onto the area we're working in. We then want our warmer yellow, so the next color we have in our swatchable palette is here. Okay, just get some intensity and then drop it down. You see how it's bleeding? And we want to try and keep this way. And if we just let them bleed together, we should get colors in between. It can be difficult to do this or when it's wet, but I do want to keep this wet. So it just naturally does it for us, so we can just watch this quickly. Wow, this is going to be a mess, I can already tell. So clean the brush, let's take our orange. So our orange is next. I'm going to dip into orange, and then I'm just going to drop it here. And it will hopefully naturally mix. And then we'll clean the brush and then bring it towards the center. This is going to be one big blob, but you get the idea. You can do this more clean without wetting it, but this is just the quickest way I feel. We're going to take, this is like an oxide red next. I'm just going to pop it here. Try and keep it most saturated on the outside. And then bring it towards the center. Maybe drop some more water onto the page. Some pigments don't want to move as much as others. Like I say, you're going to want good paper. Take the most rich red we have and do that next. This is such a mess. There we go. And at this point we circle round on my palette and we're going to hit purple. The purple swatch, the pan I have. I'm just going to drop it in. Clean my brush because it's quite a strong dark colour. And then just move it around a bit so we can try and get things blending. Try and wet the page. Okay. Now I'm going to take the ultramarine blue we have and just drop that here. They're not mixing very well, but you might have more luck with the paper you've got. It just soaks everything up. It has been the worst book I have ever used, but simultaneously the most fun I've had in a sketchbook. Sketchbooks are a place of just enjoying the process, and getting ideas down is not really for anyone's amusement other than your own. I feel like some people have presentation-based books and others have just concept and iteration books. You can never, in those ones you tend not to see much from professional artists. You always see, and even the stuff on social media is more geared towards those that want to present things nicely. And so very rarely do you see such a book like this where I'm making an absolute mess. Even despite how they're not mixing, because I'm adding so much water, you're seeing the color bleed into each other, and how this could look like or resemble a very quick color wheel. I can always go back in while it's wet and drop in more color to make it stronger, and then work it towards the center. I could always go back over certain regions, but this is just a quick demonstration. You can do a much cleaner job. You may want to do it with your wet brush on dry paper and then really work the colors together. So that was our darkest blue-green, and now we're moving to our lemon green. And this should circle back around, so technically this should just cover this whole portion. But I'm going to go back and take yellow and then go the other way around. You can sort of see how it bleeds together nicely, and that there could be an impression of other colors in between. If you have pans that fill the gaps between them, try and work it out and place them in the right places. This is the best job we're probably going to get with this palette in particular, but you have the full spectrum available. You have availability for every color. Just some of those colors are going to be more muted and stuff the more we mix them. So that's a rough impression of a color wheel, just very quickly done. You can start to see, if I keep mixing them and stuff here, that this becomes very grayed off, very muted, mixed color. Should be just value a mid-tone gray, if we do it enough. And then as we hit the outsides, that's where the colors are most pure, and they have local value that this color is a lot darker than some of these colors here. And then we can see how they fill their way around. It's a really nice range. This palette offers a lot, especially if you then go and pre-mix colors in between them, because even though we have two pigment blues, I could go and mix my own blue. It would be difficult. I could take a purple and a green, and then I'll get something in between them. But it's gonna land somewhere here in the middle rather than this end point where we have it most pure from a swatch. But that's okay. It can, if you want it to be muted, it may look really nice in combination with other colors. So that's doing the color wheel. You could do this dry, like on dry paper. I'm trying to think how this would look. Let's just do a little slice. So I've got yellow here, right? And to gradiate it out, you could add more water and clean your brush. And there are other videos online you can watch on how to sort of gradiate things. And there's all like directionality, like if I'm working from this way, like I'm pushing or pulling the pigment away. Yeah, a lot of people do it very differently. And let's just like wet this side so it's a lighter shade where it can mix. And then if I take, let's go the other way this time and just take a lemon green and then go here. Like so. And then I sort of got a gap there, but I'm going to add some water and then sort of just lead these together like that. And then pull away. Do that and then go this side. And then you can continue it. And you can see that's actually giving us a more controlled look. The only reason I didn't do this is because it's probably going to take a lot longer, and you'll want to clean these edges up, and this paper just soaks it up. So I'm going to get these harsh lines. So that'd probably be a better way of going with it if you want it to look a lot more clean and controlled. So then I could take, if we go the other way, our darkest green, and then leave a little bit of a gap so we can work water between them. Keep this area really nice and intense. And then drop some water into it or on the side. And then I'm just going to work this way. Like that. And then work towards the middle. But you can see I've got harsh lines. It's just, it dries so flipping quickly. Yeah, I'll just do that much because you can get a lot of granulation and like control out of it as you go. But you see I'm like sprawling it out now. There we go. That's a good exercise to try to have control over your colors. Have a play with mixing colors and creating, you know, a shade of green without using your pigment greens. As we can see, like this green is these two greens are from my swatch. If I was to make a green on our color wheel, we can see we're going to need a yellow and we're going to need a blue. Okay, those are the primaries that are going to make us a green. Because we have two yellows and two blues, this is why, showing the color wheel, we want our yellow that is most towards green and then our blue that is most towards green to mix something in between them. Because if we go the opposite way, if we take our warm yellow and our cooler blue, our more red blue, and we mix them, we're going to end up closer to the center, because they're more opposed to each other. And the closer to the center they are, the less saturated it's going to be. So you're not going to get as pretty of a green unless you want that kind of green, of course. So if you want a brighter green, we're going to take a lemon yellow, and we'll try glazing this time. Glazing is the act of layering very thin layers on top of each other to mix on the page. So I'm just going to take a yellow like this. It would have to dry in order for me to glaze it. Maybe we'll just pre-mix it like on the page. So there's yellow, and if I take our greenest blue and I go a lot less with this, it's probably going to be very intense either way, and I just drop this in, we're going to make a green. There you go. We've made a kind of green. If you want it to be more blue and darker, then you just inject more blue to it. And that's how we work from the lighter color to the darker color. You could go the other way around, but I find this way you just have more control when it's light to dark. Light pigment to dark pigment, as well as working from your lights in your picture to your darkest darks. There you go. That's quite a nice green. And you see it probably fits somewhere in here, like but we don't have that shade necessarily mixed as well here. If you worked it enough, you could probably get something close to it, but you may get new colors or colors you wouldn't by mixing the different pans together. The more pans you mix together, the more muddy the color is going to be, especially if those colors are complementary to each other, so they fit on the other side of the wheel. So complementary to yellow in a traditional pigment-based wheel is going to be a purple. From our blue is going to be like an orange. Okay, it is a bit squiff here, so it should be more towards orange, and our red is going to be more green. Mixing them together, you'll see you'll end in the center, so that's why it will gray out. But you may want that to mix more neutral grays. The only colors, so of all the colors I've used in the wheel, as we've seen, I've used, I think it's 10 of them, and the only two I haven't used, if you've noticed, are the black and white. These are probably more reserved for mixing. If you are doing some sort of lining or need really dark ambient occlusion, then you may want to use a black. I'd advise using more color than going straight to black, as a lot of artists agree that it just looks more appealing when we look at a color rather than crushing it to black, neutral, pure black. The reason we have the black there though is if you need to do lining or mixing. If you mix with black, like I've said before, take your lighter shade of your color and then just inject a little bit at a time the black. You don't want to start with the black and then try to add the color, because it's going to be a lot harder to pull back into saturation. It's just going to sit at black for a long time, or not work. Yeah, so you want to just incorporate a little black at a time. I won't do that on screen unless you're desperate for it later. The same effect happens with the white. I'm not really sure how to perfectly mix the white. All I do know is that you want to really make sure you have a clean brush before you dip into the white pan. As you can see on mine, it's very easy to get unclean when you're working fast. And yeah, injecting a little bit at a time. Maybe it would be even better to start with the white and then inject a little bit of color, and that way you get from white and then slowly into what you want. It's up to you at that point. You're gonna make with the white pastel colors, because adding white to a color raises it to a tint or a pastel shade. This quality of lighting is typically for like distant hues on a hazy day, anything that like conveys a feeling of light. So it's very pastel. You can see I have I'll swatch out, because I'm doing a lot of talking, I'll swatch out a purple and then I'll swatch out a pastel purple, and we'll see the difference. So this is just strong, intense, straight from the pan purple. It's very dry. My water brush is going to need more water soon, just because I've been putting a lot through it. Whoa. If you ever get into this situation, it's good that this happens. You can take blotting paper or whatnot quite quickly and just press it to it, wait a few seconds and lift. This lifting can help save you from problems like this. You can even wet the surface and then then attempt the lift to try and pull even more out. This is a really, really strong dark purple. So it is purple. I don't know if it will show it on screen. But because I took straight from the pan, you can sort of see this can almost act like your black, like your darkest color. Like you do not need to use pure black. This will lighten over time as well, so we'll see how that fares. If I take, let's just do next to it another swatch of the purple, so it just has a bit more water on it. This is just a purple in comparison, a lot lighter with water. I'm going to clean the brush and I'm going to dip into, I have a pre-mixed purple pastel here, and probably take more white into it, and we'll see the difference. So I'm just going into white with water, really working it. I'm just hoping to try and clean the white I have at the moment. So you can clean them by doing this as well. I'm doing this off screen. I don't know whether or not to show you. I'm just running out of visual space, that's all. Let's go around here. So there's my white. The white is actually more of a gouache. They kind of need to be to get coverage. You can't always really apply white on top to try and bring back to paper white. You'll never go back to paper white unless you're using something very strong or like acrylic or of a different medium. So that's why it's best to work from light to dark. If you're working with pure white, leave it as the paper white, just do not paint that surface. If you can do a layer of just the white on top, and you can lighten things and try to correct it that way. It doesn't always work though. Here is a very pastel purple. I'm gonna move this out the way. You can see the pan there. And then I'm gonna go, let's just go here and let's go. You can see it looks a lot more milky. I'm actually gonna touch it there. This isn't probably fully dry, but let's just do this as well. And you can sort of see it looks milky. And that is because the white in every watercolor palette is actually reacts or works more like a gouache does. And gouache has more opaqueness to it. They just behave a bit more different, where they'll try to cover things up. It's just needed. So that purple has more saturation to it, and is darker. Even though it's like mixed with water, quite light, but you can still see there is an effect with the white. It makes it look more milky, a lot more pastel. You could go even lighter than that, but that will dry and those will change. If I take white, let's try it over a color that we know is dry, and clean my brush very well. So it's good to have, I use not tea towels, but like, what are they called? It's like a kitchen towel, paper towel. They're a bit better than tissues, because the tissues will degrade. I'm going back into the white, just pure white with a clean brush, and I'm gonna go over, let's go over this kind of, one of these colors here. If I go over, and then we let it dry, the more intense I do it, the more coverage I'm gonna get, the more opaque it's gonna be, so I'm gonna get more coverage. But you can see it's not perfectly like the page white, but this can be helpful if you do a big mistake and you really want to try and correct it. This is one way you could attempt to, other than lifting lifting as soon as it happens to try and make it lighter, or lifting by scrubbing the page with a brush with water and then blotting it. You can use white. It doesn't always give the best effect, but that is an option. So that's the white, and the black is, so if white gives you tints, the black is going to be your shades. So if you need to follow the saturation path like we saw earlier, where we go straight to black, which is how like natural light works, and objects, the brightest and most saturated object will be is its local color, and then from that point, as it falls into shade or shadow, it's just going to go slowly more towards black, if there are no other sources of light in those shades. But that, I guess, is why it's called, when we mix black to a color, you're making a shade. It's like making a shadow. So if we take, let's take, I think a bright color will work best. Let's go back to our yellow so we can compare it to what's on the page. I'm just going to get pure yellow, and like we've seen before, I'm going to just swatch in an area. Sorry, I'm just going to drop water onto my well to make a swatchable area. There. I know this is off screen, sorry. And then I'm going to just do like 3 touches to the black, like something really small at a time. Like even that is probably too much. And I'm going to take that, and then I'm going to put next to my pure yellow, and look at that. It's already sort of like dulled it, made it darker. It is still yellow. It's got a little bit of green in it. That's because the pan was not clean. This really shows you like how little you need to really fudge the color. But this isn't bad. Yeah, I added just a few drops of black to it, a little lick of black, and we can see I'm getting a darker value. I'm going towards that center of the wheel of the Mungyo color chart. As if it was the cake, I'm going to the bottom layer. It's going toward the center is now black, and we're going towards black. So this could be the shadow to, I mean, it kind of looks like a cube in a way, and that could be the side that is not getting as much light. So it's a good way to make your shades, natural shades. So we can make tints, we can make shades, you know how to make things lighter without making them pastel. You don't want to add white every time, we just use water. The more water you use, the lighter and paler it will be. So that's how we mainly control value. If at a certain point you want to go beyond the saturation and dip into dark shades, then you can incorporate a little bit of black. So white is probably going to be your least used unless you're going for pastel colors. You will use the black more. So that's 12 colors used. We have used every color in a way. Let's just dip purely into the black and see how black it actually is. So from my kit, let's see if we just swatch that here. Look how black it is. It is a neutral black. If we add white to the black, we will get grays. If we add water to the black, we will also be able to control the value. So if I just drop a little bit of water here, and then do this, you can see it's like graying off now. It is lighter, it is brighter. So you can control a whole range of neutral value. It is a neutral black in this kit. And that's good. You can probably inject blue or orange into it to try and warm it up or cool it down if you want a different shade of grey. You can make grey by mixing your complementary colours together, so things opposite the colour wheel. So if I mix a purple and a yellow or an orange and a blue, you can start to get towards grey very quickly that way. Sometimes with pigment mixing and watercolour, you will need to mix 3 colors to get it more neutral. You'll need to mix your primaries together, and that will get you very, very much more close to a neutral kind of grey. So you need a little bit of equally yellow, blue, and your red, or your cyan, your magenta, and your yellow, in order to get a neutral grey. But thanks to having a cube of black, our pan of black, we can just very quickly get neutral colors that way. And it is really nice. I like to use this for like inking. You can use it like inking even though it's watercolor. You're just being aware that it can reactivate. And that's all. So that's why we do it like last, or is the last thing you're doing. Yeah. If there is any other things, there's plenty of other things I can talk about with the elements of color. We can really like swatch out and do the 3 components of it. You know, hue being that spectrum of from radio waves to like gamma rays, and then only a slice of it from left to right. You've got like your yellow colors all the way to like the violet and then purple. That is the hue. Sliding along, that is the hue. That is the colors we have of our pan, right? This is going around the wheel. That is the hue. We've got saturation, which is how much gray is in it. If we're being really specific, saturation path is towards black, and then the chroma is straight across to the nearest value, but in pure gray. And then we have value. Value is the most important for making images. Read how you want them to, and it is just the neutral black and whites, the grey scale, to make things darker or lighter, or how they react to light. We could really go in depth with that. There's a little explanation as to just break up what the 3 elements that make light are. We could talk about different kinds of pigments, light fastness, underpainting, glazing a bit more. There are other techniques than the 2 I've talked about, where you can use like textured brushes and other things, or toothbrushes or whatever. I really don't use those things. You don't really need to. to make good images. Limited palettes, making a palette of select colors and how to go about that by making it appealing. There's a lot to talk about, but I think this is like a good hour of listening to me ramble on about color. So hopefully you get something out of this and maybe it'll help you start. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.